how much does legacy motivate you?
I think it has everything to do with, just my aspirations in life. Like I always wanted to be a WWE superstar ever since I was a kid. Just growing up watching it, growing up watching my dad, watching Scotty. They're I wouldn't be here without them. And I just am being in it now. I'm very appreciative of the work that they did before me and them sort of like laying the groundwork for me to, for me and, my cousins or whomever would want to become a WWE superstar. That's they've laid the groundwork for us to make that, potentially possible to get a look. And it's cool, man. It's cool to kind of be in this, me currently, being Intercontinental champion and being in WWE and being on a run, and they get to, see me and be a part of that. And, I get just their wisdom and their guidance, which is extremely important to me on my day to day. It's just, it's great, man.
We talked about, your uncles, legendary wrestlers in the game. What was it like being a kid growing up in a wrestling family? Like, do you have memories of hanging out with wrestlers when you were little? Like, what was your day-to-day like as a kid, realizing that your dad and your uncle were stars?
My dad was, retired from full-time TV when WCW closed the doors, and I want to say it was like 01 or 02. And then Scotty went back to WWE in 03. But I feel like I was just a little young to kind of see them like during their prime or during their main run. But I've seen all the clips on YouTube and stuff years later. I do remember like my earliest memory of seeing them wrestle was like 06, I want to say. They were wrestling the Dudley Boys. And I remember watching that on pay-per-view in our living room and seeing that. And, it was a tape show. So my dad was sitting in the living room with me while we were watching it. And it was pretty cool. But I wish I could have been old enough to be, watching them as it's going on in real time. That would have been sweet,
Well, I tell you, as someone who was old enough to watch them in real time, it was amazing, because when the Steiners came out, you knew somebody was getting murked that night, and it was going to be vicious. and you were going to see moves that you were like, how's a man that big doing that with the suplexes? And, they were great, man. It was an awesome time to be a wrestling fan, and it was awesome being able to grow up and watch them. And when I was a kid, Bron, I would say I was in maybe my senior year of high school. I lived in a town called Altoona, Pennsylvania. They had a match. I was covering this for my school newspaper, and I went into the parking lot of the Jaffa Mosque, and I got to talk to Samu of the Wild Samoans and your dad and your uncle. And I think I want to say your dad and your uncle had a minivan, if I can recall this correctly. And they sat on the hood and they chopped it up with me for about 10, 15 minutes. And I'm like, this is crazy, man. Rick and Scott Steiner are talking to me right now. And I'm writing this story for my school newspaper, man. And it was an awesome memory of those two.
Yeah.
So that's cool, bro. Yeah. That's really cool.
And as I showed you before we started, I wanted to pay homage a little. So I broke out my Steiner Brothers t-shirt,
Look at those Michigan jackets. Watch new episodes of No Contest Wrestling every Wednesday, or listen wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to follow us at No Contest Wrestling Podcast on Instagram.